Last week I told you about a day I was dreading that turned out to be a great day. The joy, the excitement of my grandkids as they played in the rain, their gratitude, and their claim that it was the best day ever brought joy and blessing to my life. And as I said, somewhere during all of that fun, I began to think about God. I thought about the way God created everything we have, everything we are, that God is the source of every bit of good we ever experience in life. And I realized that if I expressed my joy and gratitude to God more often, then my life could be a greater source of joy to God, a greater source of blessing to God. Then my mind took it one step further. What if we all expressed our joy and gratitude to God every day for everything God did for us? Our lives would be changed forever. Our prayer lives, our worship would never be the same. We'd fill the heavens with joy, and we'd be a source of continual blessing to God. That day in the rain with the grandkids definitely helped me look at things differently. It changed me. I really have learned to spend more time giving thanks to God and expressing my joy to God. Most of you, even if you don't have kids of your own, have at least been around kids enough to know that they don't always inspire you to give joy or to express your joy to God. Anybody familiar with that? Yeah. Well, sometimes when they play together, it's anything but the best day ever. And it sounds like some of you can relate to that. One Sunday, not long ago, Mason and Macy, who are on the front row over here, he's shaking his head, even though he doesn't know what I'm about to say. Anyway, they're moving to Okinawa on Wednesday. And so we're real glad to have them with us just a little bit longer. But one time not long ago, when they stayed with us for a week, we had a lot of fun. One thing we did, Mason and I played soccer out in the front yard. Karen and I couldn't help but laugh the way he constantly changed the rules. There was no way for me to get any points at all. It didn't matter how many goals I scored, there was always a reason why that goal didn't count. He, on the other hand, got points for everything. He could get 5 points for just tripping over the ball and falling down. He got 13 points every time I stopped one of his shots on goal. But when he actually scored goals, he gave himself the biggest score possible. I think he called it 100, 3,000, 12 of the 80 points. It was a lot of fun, even with Mason's creative scorekeeping. But when children get together with other children, try to make up the rules as they go, well, it doesn't always turn out so fun, does it? It's a very different story. The fun can quickly turn to arguing and fighting, sometimes to pushing, sometimes crying. A simple, fun game can become chaotic, just completely out of control. Karen and I have seen that kind of thing too. And when the grandkids just can't work it out, we step in. We try to help them sort things out, try to make it right, bring a little order to the situation so everyone can calm down just a little bit and the fun can continue. There's no need for all that fussing. They're part of the same family. You need to treat each other right. Treat each other with love. I'm so glad adults never have that kind of trouble. Adults always get along just fine, right? No? Well, since we don't, it'd be really nice if adults, if people everywhere had someone who could step into our lives when we find ourselves in some sort of conflict, maybe confused some way, maybe experience some sort of chaos. Someone who could step in and sort things out, make things right, bring some order. When someone has a run-in with the boss, finds himself out of work, when he has bills to pay, a family to feed, and after several weeks still has no leaves for a new job, life can become scary and very chaotic. When a young person's trying to get started in life, can't find direction, when she's taken aptitude tests, tried different majors, when she sees her school debt mounting, but can't seem to find her way, life can seem chaotic. Sometime back, Karen and I got a call from our son John. One of the little girls on our granddaughter Bailey's softball team was killed in a boating accident. Bailey's world was shaken. And the family of that little girl was struggling in a way they never had before. Everything was whirling. Life seemed chaotic. Nothing made sense. When we hear people going into a movie theater or a convenience store, a school or a church and shooting the place up, we know there's chaos for the victims, for their families and friends and neighbors, and confusion, sadness, and disbelief for people like us who learn about it later. When the doctor says you have cancer, when a surgery doesn't go right, when a relationship fails, when we hear of another terrorist attack, when our elected leaders demonstrate a complete inability to work together for the common good of the people, there's confusion, chaos, hurt, pain, anger. So I believe it would be absolutely fantastic if someone could step in and bring order to the chaos in our lives, to the chaos in our world. It'd be wonderful if there was somebody who was above it all, right? Someone who could help us resolve every conflict justly. Someone who could help us understand we're not meant to be enemies with anyone. Someone who could help us find our way through whatever sort of confusion and chaos we find ourselves in. We're all created by God in God's image. We're all loved by God. We're all part of the same human family, and life is so much better when we're able to live together in love. So I think it would be absolutely wonderful if there was someone who could help us understand all of this. I'd love that. I know you would too. And I think we all know that someone exists. God. And bringing order from chaos is what God does. It's who God is. God's done it from the very beginning of time. Our Bible reading this morning is going to help us see that, or begin to consider how we see that. I'll be reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. I invite you to stand as you're able for our Bible reading this morning. Genesis 1, verses 1 and 2. When God began to create the heavens and the earth was without shape or form. It was dark over the deep sea, and God's wind swept over the waters. This is the word of the Lord. Please be seated. Back when the Bible was written, there was words to Genesis: darkness, wind, the deep sea were things that brought fear into people's lives. They didn't understand those things, didn't know about it, didn't know there wasn't some end to the sea out there somewhere. So when God began to create, we know there was no shape or form, no substance. It was dark, and a wind was whirling across the face of the waters. It was whirling through the dark nothingness. Then God spoke, and creation began. Out of nothing, God gave shape to our universe, the planets and stars, the earth we live on. God created order and life. And the way it works is absolutely amazing. Our planet rotates on its axis and revolves around the sun. This happens in just the right way, at just the right speed. The earth tilts at just the right angle. It's at just the right distance to maintain life. A minor change in all of this, a minor change to that order, would cause chaos and bring an end to life as we know it. the amount of energy that reaches the earth from the sun every day, the gases in the earth's atmosphere, in the air we breathe, everything is in balance. God put it all in perfect order so there could be life. Adam and Eve enjoyed order and life in the Garden of Eden for a while. But they gave in to temptation. They sinned. Perfect order was broken and everything changed. Evil gained a foothold in God's creation. Chaos entered the picture, and death, eternal separation from God, was what everyone experienced. It became a reality for everyone. Next thing you know, Adam and Eve were having children. They grew up, and their eldest son, Cain, murdered their youngest son, Abel. And things went downhill from there. Several generations later, evil and sin were completely out of control. God had to take drastic measures to rid the world of them and the chaos that they brought. God did it by flooding the earth and starting over with Noah and his family. Several generations after that, God's chosen people, the Israelites, were living in slavery in Egypt. They were being exploited and abused. They suffered greatly. They saw no way out. It was a time of confusion, hopelessness, chaos. So God intervened. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, God sent Moses to lead them out to a land of their own, to freedom. Along the way, God gave them the 10 Commandments to give order to their lives, to help them establish relationships with God and with each other. The first 4 commandments were to help bring order to their relationship with God. You must have no other gods before me, number 1. Number 2, do not make an idol for yourself. Number 3, do not use God's name as if it were of no significance. Number 4, remember the Sabbath and treat it holy. The other 6 commandments were to help God's people bring order to their relationships with each other so that they might be life-giving as well. Honor your father and your mother. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not murder. Do not testify falsely against your neighbor. Do not desire your neighbor's house or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. And it worked for a while. The Israelites really prospered in the land God gave them. But their success, their wealth, and their power went to their heads. They began to think so highly of themselves, they became confused about their relationship with God. They forgot He was the source of everything good. They stopped loving God. They turned to idols. And that's, it should come as no surprise, that's when their love for each other began to fail. When their relationships with each other began to fall apart. When they began to mistreat and cheat each other. When they took advantage of the poor and the weak. When they robbed their neighbors and stopped honoring their parents. No matter what God did, no matter how God warned them, they didn't turn back to Him, but committed greater acts of evil and sin, which always led to more disorder, more chaos, more pain, more confusion. And as order in society fell apart, foreign armies would come in. They would conquer them, destroy everything the Israelites worked for and accomplished, and enslave them again. Until God intervened again, freed them again, brought order and prosperity to their lives again. Then as they renewed their relationships with God and each other, things would be wonderful again for a while. This happened over and over. So God decided to get His people off this merry-go-round by sending Jesus. Jesus came to bring order and life. God in the flesh came to look us in the eye and tell us what we needed to do to get life right. Jesus spoke the truth. He lived the life He talked about, a life of love and grace and mercy, and demonstrated unbelievable patience. and an incredible ability to forgive. He used his power not to cause suffering, but to end it by healing the sick, by giving sight to the blind, making the lame walk. He used his fame and position to speak for the poor, the downtrodden, and the outcasts of society. Jesus did not condemn anyone, but invited everyone to a new way of living, to a better way, a new order, a new life that would last forever. And what did Jesus get in return? Rejection. The very people he refused to condemn condemned him. He was brutally beaten and executed. And his evil and humanity's sin were on full display. Jesus' followers were living through the darkest, most confusing, painful, and chaotic time of their lives. But 3 days later, the dark power of evil, sin, and hatred was destroyed when Jesus rose from the dead. The power of love proved to be the greatest power in the universe, a power that cannot be defeated. Because of that, anyone who follows Jesus, anyone who allows Jesus to order his or her life, will one day live with him in his heavenly kingdom of love forever. In the meantime, we're still in this broken world. We still live in the midst of sin and evil. Even the very best people we know continue to live with imperfections. Their lives become chaotic at times. So it shouldn't surprise us that there's brokenness in the world, that conflicts do arise. It shouldn't surprise us that in our lives, in this world, we'll see chaos, disorder, frustration. Sometimes we bring it on ourselves by the choices we make. Sometimes disease or disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, floods cause that. Sometimes chaos is forced on us by others. A woman named Crystal knows all about this. Karen and I went to listen to her speak one Sunday, some time back. The chaos she experienced began in her own home when she was just 3 years old. That's when her stepfather began taking her into a room to molest her. When she was 5 years old, her stepfather shot her. He tried to kill her. By the time she was 13, Crystal unsuccessfully tried to kill herself. As a confused teenager with lots of questions and no direction, Crystal tried to dull her pain, tried to dull the chaos on her life with drugs and alcohol and promiscuity. And throughout it all, she wondered. And she prayed. She asked God, if you're real, why don't you save me from this? If you're real, why do you let this happen? Crystal gave birth to a child in her late teens. She married and divorced. And is married again. She now has a set of twins, a boy and a girl. When her twins were 6 months old in December of 2009, Crystal died. Her eyes closed in this world and she woke up in heaven and experienced love and beauty and joy in a way she never dreamed it was possible. And she met God. So she asked God where he was when she was being abused. How could he let that happen if he loved her? And God answered. He said, I was right there. I was right there with you. I went into that room with you and stayed with you, crying with you through it all. The next thing Crystal knew, she was waking up in a hospital room. The medical team revived her, but she claims it was her experience in heaven that gave her life. Meeting God brought order to the chaos she experienced. And her book, Waking Up in Heaven, tells all about it. It's a New York Times bestseller. Crystal still struggles with her past, but God has blessed her with order and life and has given her assurance of a future in a place of perfect peace and love in his kingdom that will never, ever come to an end. Our God is in the business of transforming chaos into order and life. God did it during creation. God did it for the nation of Israel. God did it for Crystal. And God can do it for you. God can do it for you.